Before you can use virtualization in Windows Server 2016, you have to first install the Hyper-V role. Now, it's important to note that the Hyper-V role is not new to Windows Server 2016. And in fact, it's been a role that's been included in all Windows Server operating systems going as far back as Windows Server 2008. You can also find the Hyper-V role included with Windows client operating systems going back as far as Windows 8. So to install the role itself, I would like to point out that I'm on a computer that I have here. It has Windows Server 2016 installed. The name of my computer is host1, and it is a member server in my own local domain here in my office. Here in the Server Manager, if we want to install a role, I just simply have to click on Add Roles and Features. When I do this, the first thing I see is a before you begin screen that says, hey, you're about to install something important on this machine. So make sure your security prerequisites have been taken care of. I have done these things, so I'll go ahead and click on Next. It is a role-based installation. So again, I'll click on Next. As I mentioned before, the name of my machine is host1, and I'm a member of my own local domain that I have here called landandhotel.local. So this is the machine I want to install on. So I will click Next. And now I can choose the actual role that I want to install. And you'll see on the list, we have Hyper-v. Now, when I check the box for Hyper-v, you'll see that another window pops out saying there are some additional features that are needed as part of this installation. So I will click the button to say, go ahead and add those features. I also could then choose any additional roles that I wanted to install on this particular server, but Hyper-v is all we're looking to do, so I'll go ahead and click on Next. Similarly, if there were any additional features I wanted to do besides the ones that are going to automatically be installed, I could add them now, but I'm not looking to do anything else. I just want to do Hyper-v, so I will click Next. Now, since Hyper-v is the role that we're installing, it gives us a quick overview of what Hyper-v is. So I'll click Next again. And now we need to get into just a little bit of basic configuration. There's a lot more that we'll get into after the role's installed. But the first thing it says here, right at the top, it says virtual machines require virtual switches to be able to communicate with other computers. After you install this role, you can create virtual machines and then attach them to a virtual switch. So in the box here, it lists the network adapters that I have on this host computer. And I just have the one network adapter. It's called Ethernet. And by checking the box, it's going to create a virtual switch for that adapter. And I'm doing that so that when I create my virtual machines, I can attach them to this switch and they will be able to communicate. So I'll click Next. Another neat feature that we have in Hyper-v has to do with something called live migration. Now, live migration is something I will cover in more detail in another video. But if I wanted to go ahead and configure live migrations now, I could check the box and I could choose an authentication protocol, but I'm going to leave this all blank. Okay, and we'll worry about doing that later. And I'll click Next. We need to pick our default storage locations. This is something that you want to truly pay attention to because there is a default location on the C drive, but because virtual machines and virtual hard drives can take up quite a bit of space, you may not want them on just your local C drive. You may want to store them out on some larger storage drive that you have. I don't have another drive in this particular situation on my computer here, but I do have a folder that I set up. Put a folder called Hyper-v on the root of the C drive. So I'll just get rid of all the rest of that. Right, we just want C, Hyper-v, and then virtual hard disks. And for our virtual machines, again, I'm going to get rid of all the rest of it and just go to my Hyper-v folder at the root of the C drive. And I'll click Next. And here I get a confirmation of what we're about to do. I'm going to go ahead and check the box to say restart automatically, as if it's required as part of this process. And when I do, I get a warning box saying, hey, somebody else could be working on this server. Especially if you were doing this installation remotely, are you sure you want to do this? Because they'll be kicked off. And I'll say, yep, no one else will be using it. I'm fine. And then I'll go ahead and I can click install. And it begins the installation of the role. Now, I will tell you that this process can take a little while, can include a reboot. So through the magic of video editing, I will speed this up and bring us to the end. If you're looking to follow along, if you're trying this on your machine with me, this would be a great time to pause the video and then resume once this installation has completed on your end as well. All right, so as part of the installation process, it is mostly complete and it has also gone through a couple of reboots. And here I'm looking at the login screen. So I'm going to go ahead and log back in. And when I do, it should take us right back into the server manager and then take us back into the rest of the installation. The rest of the installation will still potentially take just a couple more moments, but we'll go ahead and we'll speed this up a little bit and get this all completed. All right, so at this point, you can see that the installation has succeeded on this particular computer. So I will go ahead and close this window. I will tell you that we're seeing some red on the screen, which can be alarming. This is just something that is typical in Windows Server 2016. When you first boot up the machine, there are some delayed services. That's all that this is telling me right here. If I were to refresh this window a few times, I don't know if it'll happen this first try. No, not yet. I'm still waiting on those services to start up. But once they do, that red will go away. So I just want to point out, because you're seeing it, and especially if you're following along, that's nothing to panic about. Rather than worrying about that, what I do want to show you is that if I go to the Tools menu, you'll see here that I now have a Hyper-V Manager option. If I click on it, it takes us into the Hyper-V Manager, and this pretty much confirms that the role has been installed and I'm ready to now use virtualization on this particular server. So again, the Hyper-V role is a very convenient feature that we have built right into Windows Server 2016, which allows us to use virtualization in our environment.